All right, we continue with the 33rd chapter of the book of Yirmiyahu. Vayidvar Adonai el Yirmiyahu Shenit. Vu'odenu atzur b'chatzar matar lemor. Right, continuing off of chapter 32, Yirmiyahu is still in the prison complex. It's not exactly a prison like we have in America, but some sort of complex that keeps him sort of hidden from the population. So, right, so we got to think that this is around the same time. A year before the temple is destroyed, it's got to be after that. So it's somewhere in that period. Karm Adonai Osa Adonai Yotzer Ota Lachno Adonai Shemo. This is what God said. God who is in the planning stage. God who is Yotzer, who is shaping it. God who is preparing these things to happen. Kra Elai ve'enecha, v'agida lacha gedolot u'v'tzorot lo yida'atam. Call me and I'll answer you and I'll tell you the wondrous things that are going to happen. We're still in the nice chapters. Redemption, return, restoration. Kicho amar Adonai Elohei Yisrael al batei ha'ir hazot ve'al batei malchei Yudah hanetutzim el hasolelot ve'el acher. Because this is what God, the eternal God, says concerning the city and the palaces of Yehuda that were torn down in order to defend the city against the Babylonians, against their invasion. Ba'im lilachem et hakastim ulemalam. At Pigrei Adam Asher Keti Vapiu V'Chamativ Asher Starti Panai Me'ayir Azot Al Koratam. Right, and the city is going to be filled. Right, we need to fight. Let's say the Jews, the Babylonians, the Chaldeans. There are going to be corpses everywhere because of my anger and my rage. I hide my face from the city because of its wickedness. But yes, this is what's going to happen now, and it's not going to help the people who are alive now. But in the future, I'm going to bring relief. I'm going to heal them. I'm going to reveal them the truth, almost like the truth of my full peace and favor. Vashivoti et shvut Yudah ve'et shvut Yisrael uvinitem kavarishona. And I will return Yehuda and Israel. We talked about in this last number of chapters. The full redemption is not just the people of Judah, not just those few who Yirmiyahu wrote the letter to in Bavel when he said, build houses and plant vineyards and live there and marry and have kids because God will remember you and you'll be taken back. It's not just that small group who's gone to submit it who are in Bavel. Everybody's going to return. V'tihartim mikol avonam asher chatuli v'salachti l'chol avonotehem asher chatuli v'asher pashuvi. And I will, right, I'm going to remove all of the sins. I will pardon you. Those of you who rebelled against me. Vaitali l'shem sason l'tilau l'teferet l'chol goy haaretz. And look at this. Over and over again, Yirmiyahu says you're going to be the shame, you're going to be the mockery, you're going to be the embarrassment. There's going to be a time where once again you will be the name, the measuring stick. You're going to be the when people mention you, it's going to be out of reverence. You're going to be a glorious nation. Because when people hear your name, they're going to revere you and they're going to be joyous and they're going to be even at the same time, they'll also be scared because of all the great things that God has done for you. And here, let's listen. Ko amar Adonai, Odi shama b'makom hazeh asher atem omrim charev, hu me'ein adam u me'ein behema. In the future, it will be heard about this place, and in this place, the place that is going to be desolate, empty of people and empty of animals. In the streets of Jerusalem that are desolate. Yirmiyahu knows that they're going to be desolate in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. This place that has been described as desolate, what's going to be there? Kol sason v'kol simcha. Simcha, kol chatan v'kol kala, kol omrim hodu at Adonai tzvaot ki tov Adonai ki liolam chasto. Mivim toda beit Adonai ki ashiv et shvut haaretz kavrishona amar Adonai. We had this numerous times in the past where Yirmiyahu said, in the future there's not going to be the sound of joy and the sound of gladness, the sound of the groom and the sound of the bride. But here he's saying, it is going to happen again. That's what there's going to be. Jerusalem is once again going to be a joyous place where we're going to say, give thanks to God. Right? God is eternal. God has brought us back. Ko amar Adonai tzvaot od yeh b'makom hazeh hacharev me'ein adam va'ad behema uv'chol harav nevei ro'im marbitzim tzon. God said, in this ruined place without humans and animals, where there's no pasture, that's not how it's going to remain. Eventually, there's going to be much flock. And there's going to be so much. It's going to be everywhere in the hill country, again, in the Shfela, in the Negev, in the lands of Binyamin, in Yerushalayim, in Yehuda, right? Everybody. Sheep are going to pass again under the hands of the one who counts them, says God. And think about that. Just think back a few days ago to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, we talk about the people going, Kiro Edro, right? Like the God is compared to the shepherd who counts every single piece of every one of his sheep who's going through. Right there in the new Natana Tokev, it's taken from the Gemara, Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and that's what, in a sense, God says here. He's saying about the sheep. Is he also really saying it about the people, that God is the shepherd, looking over his people? You can look at it that way as well, but either way, it's about the restoration. We're in verse 14. The day will come, and I will establish that which I promised for both the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Atzmiach leDavid semach tzedakah v'asa mishpat u'tzedakah ba'aretz. In those days I will raise up a true branch of David's line, and he shall do that which is just and that which is right. We have that described over and over again when it comes to the Davidic kings, the idea of tzedakah u'mishpat, whether it says mishpat u'tzedakah, whether it says tzedakah u'mishpat, righteousness and justice. That's what's lacking. And that's when this true Davidic descendant will sit on the throne. He will once again restore to the people of Israel. As you can imagine, this for verse 15 is loved by the Christians as well. In those days, Judah will be delivered and Jerusalem will be secure. And then people will be able to say, Hashem Tzidkenu, God is the one who is Sodek. So is this referring to God as the victor, as we said many times in past chapters, or is this the idea of God as the one who is showing righteousness? We talked about that too in the book of Yeshaya many times. Because God says there will never be an end to David's line who sits upon the throne of the house of Israel. Right in the future, the Mashiach ben David we talk about, when during the Talmudic period, Hillel and his descendants, who were called the Nisim, the princes, the political and religious leaders of the Jewish people of that time, were descendants from King David, from the maternal side, not from the paternal side, but they were descendants of King David. And in terms of the priests and the Levites, right, they're going to be there as well for burnt offerings and for grain offerings and to burn the sacrifices. Okay, so we're being told here, the restoration is going to happen. We're going to go back to the beginning, when things were good, when things seemed right, before civil wars, before idolatrous shrines. Vayhi devar Adonai Yirmiyahu lemor. And God says further to Yirmiyahu, and we're in verse 20, Pasuk Chaf, Kol amar Adonai, Im taferu et briti hayom v'et briti halayla ulevilti hayot yomam v'layla bi'itam. God says, if I destroy my covenant and there's no more day and night, if that happens, gam briti tufar et David avdi miot lo ven molech al kiso v'et halavim hakohanim mishartai. As long as you know that there's day and night, the sunrise and the sunset, whether it be in the winter, the summer, the longer days, the longer nights, just like that's not going anywhere, there's going to be a descendant of David who's going to sit on my throne. That also is not going to come to an end, as well as the Levites and the Kohanim are going to remain. The people are working in my temple. And just interestingly, we talked about here in this book how Nebuchadnezzar is called Avdi. Nebuchadnezzar is God's servant doing God's work of destroying Jerusalem, destroying all the nations that are around it. And here with the restoration, the Eved is no longer Nebuchadnezzar. The Eved, the servant of God, the one who is fulfilling God's work on this earth, is the Davidic dynasty, is the descendant of David. Asher lo yisav herz v'ashamayim lo yimad chol hayom kein arbed zera David avdi v'et halavim misharteoti. Just like the heavens can't be counted, right? We know there are a lot of stars; they go on forever. can never figure them out. I have to have, I don't know, 1 million Hubble telescopes or something to find all the stars. So the same way that can't be counted, and the grains of sand in the sea can't be counted, so too will the offspring of my servant David and the Levites, right? The return's going to be full. It's almost going back to the time of Avraham. With this, there's going to be this, the right Avram is told that his descendants are going to be like the stars in the sky and the sands in the sea. So we're going back there. Number 3, prophecy number 3, real quick. Vayidvar Adonai el Yirmiyahu lemor. God says again to Yirmiyahu, Hello, Ra'ita ma mazed dibru lemor shtei mishpachot asher bachar Adonai bahem v'yimasem v'tami natzun miot od goy lefneim. You know what God said? That these 2 families that God chose has now been rejected, that God despised them, right? And they're no longer a nation. Who are these 2 families? Presumably the family of David and the family of Aaron, the Kohanim / Leviim and the kings. Ko amar Adonai, imlo briti yomam v'layla chukot shamayim v'eretz lo samti. And again, what does go back and say? Just like there's day and night, just like their laws, Mother Nature, Gam zer Yaakov v'David avdi emas mikachat mizaro moshlim el zera Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov ki yashiv et shvutam v'richamtim. So too, I will never reject the seed of Yaakov. I'll never reject the descendants of King David. He's my servant. They will be the rulers forever, and they will be the rulers of the descendants of Avram, of Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and I will restore their fortunes. I will take them back. So yes, this is a chapter all about destruction, all about the horror in the past. It's going to come true, but if the horrors are going to come true, then so too will the joys of the future. And this is something that we see in the Talmud, the end of the Gemara, Masechet Makot, in the person of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is walking with the rabbis in the aftermath of destruction of Beit HaMikdash. So it's somewhere between the year 70 and 133 or so, with the Bar Kokhba rebellion. We don't know what year it is exactly. And they see wolves running around and foxes running around the Temple Mount, the Har Habayit. And Rabbi Akiva is laughing, and they're tearing their clothing, and they say, how can you do this? And he says, just like there was a prophecy of destruction, that the place will be desolate and foxes will run around in it, right? It's going to be a nothing. If that prophecy has come true, so will the prophecies of return. So will the prophecies that God will come back and the Jewish people will come back to this place. And so that idea that we have in the Talmud, again, the end of Masechet Makot, known within Rabbi Akiva, whose vision is to the future and to the redemption, we see here that that is something that has already been said in the prophecies of Yirmiyahu over the course of the last number of chapters.